All right, what's going on, everyone? This is Jonathan Sports Cards and Sunsets here with Nate in Cardboard Veritas for another episode of Rough Cuts. How's it going, Nate?
Hey, what's up, Jonathan? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. So this is our pre-national 2026 episode. Nate, 9 days from now will be day one of the 2026 National in Chicago. It's going to be my fifth consecutive with my daughter. And this is going to be number 6 in a row for you and your son, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Can't wait. It's a big, marker that we put for each summer at the very beginning of the year. And, we wouldn't miss it. We look forward to it. And when we get to this point, it's one of the best stages, where we're right on the cusp of being able to experience it. I think we're all in full kind of national fever right now.
Yeah, me too. I'm so excited. I started putting together the boxes of cards I'm going to take for trade bait. I have a PSA submission for some reholders that I will drop off in person while I'm there. Just putting together my list and doing all the stuff to get ready. I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice. Awesome. I have some more work to do on that for sure. When we get to the national part, I'm going to talk about some of the prep that I still need to
do. Yeah. There's always a lot of prep. Well, so let me cover really quickly the agenda. We're hoping to cover, first of all, the state of the market. This is something that all of our hobby buddies have been talking about and commenting on heading into the national this year. Is the market has been distinctly up and to the right this year. So we'll talk about kind of observations on that. Some of the drivers, our takes on what's going on there, even some places and opinions where we can find some value or where we think we might find value this year. Then we're going to talk about our pickups year to date and kind of what we've been doing in the midst of this market. And then we'll talk more specifically about the show, what we're going to be doing, what our plans are, kind of our tactics and strategies for the event, and our hopes and dreams. So with that, Nate, let's jump in and talk about kind of the state of the hobby market. Now, we have a bunch of charts and graphs to show from Card Ladder to kind of double click on what we've been seeing. But why don't you kick off with kind of a high level view?
Yeah, for sure. And whenever we talk about the market, our buddies from Card Ladder are always very helpful. The indexes that they do are really interesting to look at. And, obviously no single metric is going to be perfect, but we have our general senses of what we're observing in the market. And then it is interesting to see some, kind of more macro data that they help to provide. So, I think one of the charts or a couple of the charts we had looked at were, there's a vintage card index and there's a pre-war card index, and you can see what the market has done over different periods of time. And on the both vintage and pre-war, each are up about 40% over the last year, and each are up about 50% over the last 2 years. Give or take a percent or two here and there. So, about 40% since the last time we were getting ready to go to the national, and that's on a market-wide basis. So, as with everything, there are many outperformers and plenty of underperformers, but there are a lot of cards since last year at this time that are up 70, 80, 90, 100% on average. So, as you said, distinctly up and to the right. I have on Card Ladder, there's another feature where you can kind of build your own index. And I have one with like 54 of my key cards, and it's slightly outperformed the market. It's 50% over the last year and 65% over the last 2. So, just to, give another kind of little data point, one that I track at least. And then the last thing that I'll mention that I think is just as instructive and perhaps just as or even more impressive from a market standpoint is Card Ladder also has it tracks the amount of money spent on cards and sealed wax for the 5 highest grossing platforms in each month. And so, we have up through June 2026 data. The 5 biggest platforms in this instance are eBay, far and away the biggest, Fanatics, Golden, Alt, and Heritage. And the 5 largest platforms for total card volume in June 2024 aggregated to 200 million. June 2025 aggregated to 300 million. So a massive 50% gain in volume in 1 year. And now June 2026 is up to 700 million. So another 133% gain over last year in terms of total sales volume. So yeah. What do you think about all that?
Wild. Yeah, I think so. All of us collectors are looking like geniuses to our spouses right now when our card portfolio is up more than our 401k, which bizarrely is true for me. I didn't see that coming. When I look at these charts, even on pre-war vintage, I didn't realize it had been so frothy. The chart for the folks listening on podcast format we're looking at a 2-year chart, and 2 years ago it was kind of flat-ish but up, but then this last year, it really gets steep. The vintage one was the same. I'm going to flash another chart in a second to just show a different component of this market. The vintage market still, though, when something is up compounding, I don't know, 25, 30% a year, feels like a healthy market, maybe sustainable over time. But let's look at a particular Michael Jordan card, and then we'll look at the full Michael Jordan market. We were just talking about this one. This is the base version of the famous MJ Precious Metal Gems from 1997. So everyone knows that red card, the green variant, but this is just the base card. What are we looking at here in a PSA 9?
Yeah.
It is up over the past year 900%.
Yeah.
So it's gone from being what? Where did it start in value? And now it looks like it's up to being nearly $3,000.
Yeah, it started at $270 this time last year, and it's at $2,600.
It's now that I wouldn't call a sustainable market. Maybe it's a sign that the market for Jordan has been healthier than ever before. We're both big Jordan collectors. We've been enjoying this, but 900%. If I had one of those, I might be dusting it off to maybe trade it away at the National. But now let's look at the, I'm going to pull up the full Michael Jordan index over the last 2 years, which is up, 187% across the catalog. We've been sensing that in the market. You see, for some of these players, it feels like you're almost afraid to sell a card because the next month you just know it's going to be higher than it was before. And I remember when it felt a little bit this way in 2021 when The Last Dance had come out on Netflix. But yeah, what's your take on where this is all going for the modern MJ market?
Yeah, I mean, crazy stuff. We've all been watching Jordan closely. And so many people have some kind of Jordan collection, that everyone, or, a lot of people have a vested interest. I think whether you're if you're an ultra modern collector, you usually go back to Jordan. And if you're a vintage and pre-war collector, you usually go up to Jordan. Everyone, kind of has an affinity for that stuff. One thing I'll say with the Metal Universe card in a PSA 9 is, just a really short and quick victory lap for the anti-consolidation crew. It's a $270 card in a PSA 9, and we're supposed to have consolidated those up into bigger cards so that we could do better from an investment standpoint, and we're supposed to have 10s and not 9s to do better. But one of the things we've been seeing is 8s and 9s outperforming 10s, and a lot of cards that were small cards, there's, as we saw, the MJ market's up about 100% over the last year. This lowly little PSA 9 is up 900%. So it's not always the big cards. It's not always just the PSA 10s. A lot of times there's other elements of the market that do really well. But, one thing is, a lot of the stuff we've seen on the modern side has, as much as the vintage cards have been going up, it's really kind of dwarfed it in terms of, the returns we've been seeing on the Jordan, Kobe, Curry, those elements of the market. So it's been fascinating to watch. And frankly, with a lot of my Jordan stuff, as you said, I'm starting to get kind of tempted to liquidate some of it because, I liked those cards at $500, $300, but I'm not sure I'm as attached to them if they're worth $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 and I could do some other things with that money. So I'm a pretty pure collector, but at a certain point it starts to kind of pull on you a little bit and feel like you should start to liquidate some stuff.
Yeah. And it's fun to play around with the timing a little bit. You made 2 points that I loved. One is that the OG vintage collectors kind of flex up to as recent as Jordan in their collecting, and then the ultra modern guys will flex down, to MJ. And so Jordan is kind of a pivot point in time and space of collectors, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. The other thing, and it shows you where there's a lot of, I think, healthy pockets in this bull market we're seeing. The fact that the PSA 8s and 9s are in a lot of cases, and that's, those are the ones, even 7s that are in our collections, are outperforming 10s, I think shows that there's just a lot of collectors that really just want to own the card. There's like, I want that Jordan refractor. They hardly ever come up for auction, and I'm just more than happy to have an 8 because I just want to look at the card, and you can't tell the difference with these modern cards. So it's I think that's a good sign. What pocket of the market do you want to kind of pivot and look at next? Some of the vintage baseball guys. Do you want to look at LeBron, Kobe? Kind of where are you thinking next?
Yeah, well, let me actually, we're looking at a lot of numbers, and I like the discussion around it. But let me maybe ask a little more kind of philosophical question that I hear people talk about sometimes, and I'm not sure we've ever talked about. But a lot of times people say, and this market kind of brings these types of questions to the fore. But do you care what values do, or are you a pure collector that just buys a card and never looks, or are you a pure investor where you're just about the money, or what's kind of the mix of that? And I feel like I hear all different ranges of answers. I think you and I are probably pretty similar, but I'd love to, in the context of the discussion around this market and how in the forefront the market is right now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that balance.
Yeah, and you and I, we've even taken some surveys around how to define our collecting style. I think you to me are one of the most purest collectors I know. I think I'm slightly more towards value focused than you, but not as much as most collectors in the hobby. For that when cards I own go up in time, I think it's fun to go to the spreadsheet and kind of marking up, and it's nice to be in the green on them. Even so, most of these cards I intend to hold for life and hopefully pass on to my kids. So for I'm not watching the values go up because I want to profit on the ones that I think are hold for lives. But on the flip side, the cards that I don't have yet, when the market is going up and up and up, sometimes I start to think, wow, this might get away from me if I don't go soon. So the primary reason I watch values in the hobby, and it certainly is a material factor for me, is if that card gets away from me and gets too expensive, I might never own one. I'm feeling that way right now with the Gaudi kind of cartoonish big head Joe DiMaggio card from 1938. They've just gone up and up and up.
Yeah. And
suddenly it's a $10,000 card or more.
Right.
I felt that way with a few of the cards I ended up buying in the last couple of years. Even though the prices seem high, if I have faith that they're going to go higher, I better just jump and get it now because I want to own the card. So that's the primary reason for me. And what'll I be able to afford this year at the National? How about you? How do you think about it?
Yeah, and so I like that. I actually, as much as I'm really kind of collector forward, and that really motivates the vast majority of my buying, collecting decisions, I do care about the values a lot, and I think for me at least, it would be pretty disingenuous to say that I don't. And it feels weird to me when I hear people say that they don't. In that, like, we actually spend a fair bit of money on these cards, and it would seem pretty crazy to me to do that if I didn't care about them, use the term that I think we often use, who are, primarily collector based, like long-term stores of value. And I think that's how I tend to think about it. I don't think about it in the context of this market where cards are just going crazy and, up 50% all of a sudden and all that. Like that's not why I'm doing it. But I really care that they maintain their value. And I most certainly would not be spending as much money on cards as I do if I didn't think that they would. I think that would be reckless and selfish and crazy, so I think, something that underlies my entire approach to collecting in the hobby is a fundamental faith in the likelihood of these cards to continue to at least maintain their value kind of vis-a-vis inflation. Again, not to outperform our 401ks like you referenced before, but
yeah,
so it matters to me. And in terms of, I think where you kind of went a little bit after that is, do we like to see the values go up like this? And that's kind of a mixed bag, I think, for both of us. Unless you're new to the hobby and just starting to collect, like, then it's probably kind of purely bad. Or if you're about to liquidate, then it's pretty purely good. But, where we are, which is, we have pretty substantial collections, but there's a lot of stuff we're really engaged with the hobby. We love buying. There's a lot of stuff we really want. It's kind of a clear double-edged sword. I'd say my ideal for the market would be for it to kind of gently go up, like 5-6% a year. If I could pick, I would have it go up like 6% a year every year, and that would allow the market to stay in the background and kind of do what it's supposed to do. And we could just collect and not if that was the case this year, we'd probably be doing a deep dive on like the 33 Sport King set or whatever, like something. Yeah. But it's like this market is just so front and center. And also, with it doing this, and you alluded to this as well, but you run the real risk of collapse, when you're going up this much. Naturally, there's got to be a correction at some point, and that gets uncomfortable for everyone. So, yeah.
I've learned as an investor in public equities that when a stock is super volatile or just goes ballistic, like Micron did recently or Nvidia did a few years ago, it can't last forever. Yeah. And so for me, when you see crazy volatility in a market, you have to pay attention to values. And that's why I said I'm selling some of my Jordans. I can't imagine that if I have grandchildren someday, that when they own it, that it's going to have performed well against what it is today. And some of these modern cards with serial numbers, there's so many of them, I just can't imagine how the market will evolve. Right. Now, 52 Mantle or a Gaudi Ruth, I really don't worry. I don't check the market or values of those that often because I just have the fundamental faith, like you mentioned, that it's a good store of value. Sometimes it's a little hotter than others, but I'm pretty set. It's kind of like the blue chip investments you have, or just, you invest in the S&P. You don't have to look at it every day. You just kind of have faith, like over time it's going to be fine. But there's a lot of cards that I buy and really enjoy. Some cards that I was buying this year that I know I can only have for a little while, and volatility is going to do something. And I probably, there's some time horizon by which I need to let it go to the next person, because I don't have faith that it's going to do well over 50 years. So it totally informs how I collect. But there's definitely those two classes of blue chip or volatile.
Right. Yeah. And, when we put up a chart like the one you showed with the Jordan Metal Universe card 9xing in a year, like, you have to really, really, really love a card when it's gone up that much to continue to hold it, and if it's stuff that you're just, kind of dabbling in and having fun with, and you don't have a real heartstrings attachment to it, it can start to feel a little loose in your grip when, shoot, if Gaudi Ruth's 9x'd, like, I'd have trouble not liquidating one probably, and I do love those with all my heart, so I don't know. Yeah. It's just, there, to me, there's no better indication that something is likely to go down over the next year than that it went up 9x the prior year.
Yeah. So I want to hear, I want some of your takes, hot or cold, on why you think the market is doing what it's doing in the hobby. I'll share some of my own.
Yeah.
And then, when we've also looked into this data, and it's something we talk about a lot too, it's not that everything is frothy. I mean, across the board, I think it's a very healthy market, but there's still pockets of value to be found. And I want to discuss that too. But what are top of mind for you, some of the observations that you think are driving this bull market?
Yeah. Good. I'm excited to hear yours. And if anyone in the chat has theories on this, I'd love to hear those too. Because feel like it's just kind of an amalgamation of things that we can think of and theories we can come up with to try to figure it out, because there's no right answer necessarily. But so let me start with something that it's not, which is we've always heard, or I've heard many, many times, that the card market goes as the crypto market goes. And so over the last 2 years, Bitcoin is flat, and over the last 1 year, it's down 45%. So it's not because Bitcoin is high. So we, in part, at least over this period, we can dispel that theory.
Totally.
Yeah. One, I think, is growth of inventory. And, I don't know whether to call it like semi-permanent inventory, and there are a few factors. So kind of cards that people hold for, not a quick flip, but, some type of commercial purpose, let's say. So one example, there's a proliferation of sort of franchised, or maybe not franchised, but, multi-unit card shops. So the Vault by Tom Brady, Cards HQ is expanding. I just saw Lewis Hamilton has some partnership, and he's going to be building out shops across Europe, Australia, and the Middle East. We see a lot of new shops popping up in our communities. And then, so those shops all need inventory, right?
Yeah.
They got to buy cards. They got to have cards. They have to hold them, and they have to get them from somewhere in order to do so. Similarly, dealers, people going full-time or semi-full-time into the hobby, who need to hold a bunch of cards because that's their business now, is buying and selling them. So, we look at our favorite, example vintage dealer for a lot of these things, Osh. And I mean, he has a tremendous amount of inventory that he holds. And so that's taking up cards. He's out competing in the market. He's buying out other dealers. He's competing in auctions, and not just him, but Ballpark Memories and Stan's Vintage, and a lot of these guys that, you go to Stan's table and he's got 40 Cracker Jack cards there. And like, that's a big chunk of Cracker Jacks, there aren't that many of them. And he's bought some in auctions, and he's bought some from collectors and others. So, the more and more people kind of that get a great degree of confidence in this market and see it perform over a period of time and think, hey, I can go kind of be full-time in this and go to shows or open a shop or whatever. That's all kind of sucking up cards, more people competing for cards. So I think that's part of it. Repacks on the vintage side, I think, is probably a little less. I don't really know that market that well. Someone else probably could speak to that better than me. I do hear it referenced sometimes. I see videos sometimes where you got someone walking up and buying a handful of vintage cards to put in repacks. So I do think there's at least, a little bit of a factor there. And then I think more collectors, certainly I think that's part of it. So that's the kind of more permanent home, or some, longer term home than the type of inventory I was just talking about. And, I think Fanatics, as much as people, like to come at them, I prefer to go at PSA myself rather than Fanatics, because I think Fanatics actually is doing a lot of good stuff. But, they're doing a lot of great things. They're generating a lot of interest. I have zero interest in the vast majority of their products, but, it's fun to watch what they're doing. It's fun to see how they're bringing people in. It's fun to see how they're generating excitement about the hobby. And I can't help but think that trickles into all elements of it. So, and then you made a point when we were talking about the, again, the Metal Universe Jordan. And again, that's just one example, but 8s and 9s are doing well. 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s. People are buying those cards. That's not like institutional investors, coming in and buying that stuff. Like, to me, that's indicative that you have a broad and expanding collector base, and it's the same thing on the vintage side. We see it with low grade cards. They're very, very popular right now. And to me, those are further indicators that we have an expanding base of collectors. And then the last thing I'll say is, and I think this maybe came up a little bit on our last episode where we talked about the impact of AI, but kind of macroeconomic trends where, you have a growing number of wealthy people in this country with a lot of investable assets and disposable income. And I think, particularly people say under 40, under 50, see sports cards as a really interesting place to deploy some of that capital. And, so as the wealth continues to grow, as generations continue to come up that see this as a real asset, a real industry, I think, we see more and more of that available income. It's just kind of a slowly rising tide that I think continues to kind of help sports cards. So I don't know. Those are some of my theories. What do you think?
One thing you said that kind of resonated with me and was on my list is the dealers and the flippers. We are seeing them set absolute hard floors on the value for a lot of iconic cards that are high demand cards. A 52 tops Jackie Robinson, for example.
Yeah.
And then when the floor goes up, they hold it, and they are competing with and bidding against and winning cards at auction against collectors. And and then they're content to hold it, and they know that they'll be able to sell it for more down the road. Ash is one of those guys, but there's a lot of them. And so a lot of those cards that you would just put on the, whatever iconic vintage cards and modern are, it's a small enough supply that a small group of collectors and dealers really can kind of create a floor on it. And we've seen this across the hobby. Some people try to kind of corner the market on different RPAs or things, but I really feel like that's a guarding function that these dealers are doing, is we are not letting those cards sell for below this. And it kind of holds and stabilizes the market. So that's one. But I thought a lot about what's happened in the modern market that's impacting the broader market and vintage. And one of the sound bites for me was, it's GOATs doing GOAT things that is impacting the hobby. And I think Ohtani was what started for me. Like, we've seen Ohtani, and this talk around, he's the greatest since Babe Ruth. Nobody's done anything like him in 100 years in the sport. And, he's one of the GOATs, and the GOAT keeps doing GOAT things and winning a World Series. And his market, we didn't show that chart, but it's just crazy. I'm sure it's as stratospheric as Michael Jordan's. Lionel Messi with the World Cup having just finished, and 39 years old, still leading the statistical race in a bunch of categories. Messi's market has been way up. So a lot of these modern, greatest of all time or prospects have brought a lot of people into the hobby. We saw this in COVID too, with the Luka market or Zion. Remember when he was driving things? The thing about the modern market is it's super volatile. Like I was just talking about, you can own these cards, you can do really well, but most of them you might not want to sit on forever. And so I think what's happened is, just like GameStop got a bunch of people, retail traders into the stock market. I bet a lot of those that learned how to trade meme stocks now are buying S&P 500 exchange traded funds. And I think the same thing is in our hobby. All these people come in to collect players they're watching and watch these prospects and GOATs do amazing things. You want to own their card. But then when you see the volatility in modern, you start to look for the blue chips in vintage. And there's so many young dealers that have gone on that journey. And then you've got everything that Fanatics is doing in the hobby to bring current athletes and celebrities into ripping packs and talking about buying cards. That just creates more collectors in the top of the funnel. So I think all of those trends are moving the market for some pretty healthy reasons. But I'm still prepared for volatility in the near term, just because the slope coming into the National this year is so steep.
Yeah. Great points, man. Yeah, well said. Right. The Ohtanis and the MJs and guys like that tend to really, really lead the market. And that's one of the fun things about, about sports cards is the continued impact of the modern players and the modern market on kind of the whole spectrum of cards, right? Like Wembanyama kind of, can catalyze in some ways the, I don't know, the LeBron market or the Jordan market with some of the things that he does and getting people excited about basketball again. And someone comes in and buys a Wemby card and starts thinking about, all the different crazy theories that we as collectors come up with that lead us to make our purchases. So I like those points a lot.
Hey, I want to, before we talk about kind of pockets of value in the current market, I want to hit a few of the comments that came in. So David Chase asked, if your Leaf Page or my 52 Tops Mantle 9X, would we possibly sell them? You said in the comments, no way, you're not selling yours. I've already promised mine to Lucia, my daughter. I'm not selling mine either. So you hit the cards that we're probably most white knuckle holding on to. Now, if that happened to 1953 Tops Jackie Robinson, yeah, I'd sell it if at night, because it's a pretty common card, and I would think I could buy it back later. But
totally,
for certain cards, we are irrationally attached to our collectibles. I'm going to show a few more comments here. Josh Thomas, or JT, as we might know him, said he thinks PSA cards are getting a premium right now, and that's particularly intense or felt because they're not even allowing bulk submissions at the lower price points,
Great point.
which is very much a good point. And so that's kind of leads me into one of the things I wanted to talk about in where to find value. One of my opening thoughts was the PSA cards seemed, if you care the most about the slab, that's the slab to have. But if you just want the card, oftentimes you can find that Jordan card instead of a PSA 9 and an SGC 9 for a lot less. And maybe the card is just as good. Maybe not. Maybe PSA standards are more strict. I think it's all over the map, frankly. You can find CGC slabs. You can find Beckett slabs. Or God forbid, you can buy some of these MJs raw. I have a pretty big raw Jordan collection. A lot of cool cards that are worth $15.
Yeah.
And so one is, if you're looking for value and you just want to participate in the hobby, do you get away from slabs, especially PSA slabs? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I do a fair bit of that, and I've been finding myself doing more of that over the last few months. I hadn't really even necessarily fully thought of it in that way. But now that you say it, I kind of realize and you and I always enjoy collecting raw stuff anyway. We have, raw binders and, plenty of top-loaded cards and stuff. So there's always a place for that stuff in our collections. But, I do think, especially on the modern and, ultra modern, especially sides, I've been doing that even more and more. So yeah, absolutely.
I've also, in doing that, sort of discovered the beauty of the one touch. I'm going to sort of jump ahead, but one of the things I did this year when the market was up and I wanted to keep collecting but not spending as much money is buying these 1998 East-West refractor cards. Now, the Jordan I have graded, but the other ones, I'm showing one that has Allen Iverson for the East and Gary Payton for the West. These are beautiful cards. Tim Hardaway for the East, and it's got my local hero here in Utah, John Stockton, on the back. There's 20 in the set, and you could find these if you waited. Some of the cheaper ones were $40. A lot of them were $90 or so. And it still is the card. Lo and behold, without a PSA slab, it still is the object. And I think most people would look at it and have, give full faith and credit to the fact that it's not a reproduction. It's the real deal card. And we we get so used to just thinking of the card and the slab as they have to go together. But there's a lot of these modern cards where you can have a lot of fun in the hobby without it.
Yeah, for sure. And I have one as well here I'll show, which is kind of funny. It's from this year, a Topps Chrome. You're gonna like this one. Numbered to 75, green space dust, Victor Wembanyama in
Look at that.
in a black frame, one touch.
Yeah, that's classy. Looks good in that one touch.
I've been enjoying them too, man. And they look a lot of, they look really nice, and it's fun to display them like that. So
do you think that maybe that card wouldn't have come on the market raw if PSA was still, floodgates open?
I don't know. It was pretty shortly, I bought it, pretty recently, kind of during the run. I get caught up in the hype sometimes and do dumb stuff, but that's pretty shortly after a lot of that stuff was ripped. So I don't know. I can't speak to that ultra modern market well enough. I just play in it every once in a while with a couple $100 cards. So I don't know.
All right, I want to talk about and I'll show some more card ladder charts, but we have had conversations about some people who are in those GOAT greatest of all time conversations and across vintage, where it's not 30% up year over year every year, doubling year over year, but some players are surprisingly affordable by comparison. What's one that comes to mind for you? And I'll see if I can pull the chart up, Nate.
Okay. Yeah. So one that you and I and some of our good buddies have talked about a lot is Willie Mays. He seems to have lagged kind of across most or all of his major cards. And yeah, I think so. What's up 16% over the last 2 years, the Willie Mays market. So, we talked about vintage broadly, and pre-war being up about 50% over the last 2 years. So that's a fairly substantial lag. And I think if we look at the Jackie Robinson, well, let's see, Mantle is up 73% over the last 2 years, and Jackie's up 100% on their card ladder.
So I'm showing, the Mantle is especially recently way up, and I'm going to pull the Jackie. Yeah, Jackie just very steadily and consistently up.
Right.
And Mays, and when you look at this 2-year chart, it was down. It looks like Mays just barely, like a few weeks ago, recovered and is slightly up over a 2-year trend, but pretty flat.
Right. Yeah,
which is surprising.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's I don't know. You want to say maybe like the flight to quality, like the story is so easy with, I feel like Mantle, Jackie, and Ruth. It's like, the absolute upper echelon of people to collect. But how can you say Mays is, not collecting him is like not quality or whatever, like it just, that seems like a stretch to me. So I don't know. I mean, I would guess that'll correct at some point, but maybe it won't. I mean, maybe, the stories with the other guys are more compelling and he just is not going to get traction. But he used to be, one thing I looked at is he used to be, really for a while pretty even with Jackie. I mean, I think he used to be ahead of Jackie going way back, but in terms of kind of equivalent cards. And I looked at 56 tops average prices on a PSA 5. And right now, Mays, recent sales is at about 900. Jackie is at 1,400 and Mantle's at 4,500. So
wow.
It's and I think again, Jackie, and I think that's a pretty pure comparison. It's hard with a lot of cards because the 55 Mays is a high number, the 53 is a short print, 52 Jackie's a short print. Maybe you could do 54, but 54 and 56 are maybe kind of the purest comparison. And I think there's a really widening gap there, and it'll be interesting to see if that corrects.
We talk a lot about, as much as collectors love to argue about which player is better, it really doesn't necessarily correlate to value, because collectors stories are really what drives collecting, even flaws, and we talk about how that has influenced the Mickey Mantle market, the stories, certainly Jackie Robinson's market, even modern players like Bo Jackson. People still collect them for the stories, even though his career was kind of shortened by injury. So yeah, I do wonder if for Willie Mays, in some ways he was so clean and so consistent and so professional in his approach to playing the game of baseball. And folks that watched him say he was the greatest 5-tool player of all time. Mm-hmm. But somehow that's not holding his market up. The two other theories that I had that I'll offer is one, I think anytime we use the term GOAT, but we use it as a plural. They're the GOATs, the greatest of all time, as some grouping, the Mount Rushmore maybe. And Ohtani is in. Everybody's saying Ohtani is one of the GOATs of baseball. So who's out? And I suspect that somehow there could be a correlation between when you think about the greatest players ever in baseball, and there's only a certain number that we can have in our mental Mount Rushmore, that Willie's maybe getting pushed out by folks who don't remember him and didn't watch him play. The other one is at any time in the hobby where there's some play for, surefire that's going to make you money. It doesn't work anymore. Hank Aaron passed away, and his cards went vertical briefly, or for a while after he passed, and everybody wanted a Hank Aaron rookie after he died. It was a sad time. And suddenly all the capitalists in the hobby thought, oh, we should stack cards of players who are still alive. And when they pass away, the cards are going to go like this. And it stopped becoming true as soon as it became a theory, because then player dies, the market is flooded with their cards, and the market goes down. And I think that had an impact on Willie Mays's card market. I think a lot of players were buying his cards with one of the investment theses was he's still alive, he'll pass away sometime, and that'll create a boom. And then everybody counted on it, and the opposite happened.
I like that. Yeah, maybe there's still some reverberations from that. Well, I'll try one last theory on Mays, which is that he doesn't really have like a signature super popular or best card, or a card that's taken off in the last few years, or like everyone kind of has their own favorite Mays card. I feel like obviously his rookie and his 52 tops are are kind of the most popular cards, and then his 53 tops is really cool as as a short print. But I don't know, the Mays market's really spread. Like there's a lot of people, like the 49 Bowman Jackie has just gone nuts recently because a lot of people have started to consider it a rookie card as well. The Leaf Jackie is so iconic. That's kind of gone nuts. The 52, Mays doesn't really have like that one sort of super iconic card to kind of anchor his market. Even Aaron with the 54 tops, like everyone feels like they need to have that card in their collection. And most people I talk to just love it. But with Mays, it's so fractured. It's hard to kind of get a full beat on his market.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I also wanted to share, David in the comments had a very similar theory as I just shared on Willie's passing and how that dealers, what they expected around that. So I'm not the only one out there with the theory. So we've talked about, avoid slabs or no slabs other than PSA as a place to find value. Mays is an example of great collectible players where there's still value. What are some other ones that you think of, and when you're walking around the floor in Chicago and you're thinking maybe not everything here is going to be overpriced? What are some avenues?
I have an easy one that just continues to befuddle me, which is vintage basketball. And I feel like there's great opportunity right now. I have a lot of the stuff there that I want, but I'm thinking about, and I've actually kind of started a little bit kind of stacking some stuff, just because I am so amazed at how much it's lagged, how much more rare it is than the baseball equivalents, and how much it's lagged. And maybe it'll never actually really catch on, but yeah, you're showing a chart here for Wilt for the past 2 years, and he's basically flat. I looked at Kareem, and he's up 20% over the last 2 years. Bill Russell is down about 5 or 6%. And then vintage football is similar. Jim Brown is flat. Unite is flat. Walter Payton's up 20%. So, those two just have been nowhere near as, those two kind of groups of cards have been nowhere near as popular as some of the other vintage stuff, particularly vintage baseball. Certainly not nearly as popular as modern stuff. And there have been some exceptions, like on the vintage stuff has actually done really well, like the Sport Kings cards and the Chickle Nagurski and the Goodwin Champions football card. Like some of the rare pre-war stuff has kind of been an exception. And on the basketball side, actually the Magic and Bird rookie card from 1980 has done really, really well over the last couple
has
of
it?
years. Yeah. I just realized that within the last couple of weeks. But so, again, like everything, it's not monolithic, but generally speaking, those two kind of, areas of the hobby, I think have really lagged in this latest run up. And I think view a lot of opportunity there.
When I think about baseball and the mantle market, I mean, the fact is, when you look at sports in the U.S. today, baseball, I think, is now fallen to fourth most popular after football, basketball, and even soccer now. And so I'm kind of shocked that, but Mantle still is sort of the icon of sports collecting, and he's got these stories and his flaws, and he was fascinating. And his market, we showed what his chart looks like. I'm shocked that Wilt Chamberlain's market doesn't look like Mantle's market because of the popularity of basketball, the dominance of the player. It's anyone with a straight face could still argue that he was the greatest of all time and have a good set of arguments to make. It's not my opinion, but you could say, like, he scored 100 points in a game, his personal life, and his, like, just a fascinating guy. Same for Bill Russell. How is Bill Russell's market down over 2 years? It's kind of shocking. And he has, a very small supply of cards, really 3 playing dates cards, right? And one of them, his rookie, is so iconic. So makes no sense to me. I don't get it. The pump starts now. To all of our 3 dozen listeners out there, the pump starts now.
Let's have it start in like a year. I have my collection, but I want to invest in some stuff that can be
Good
liquid.
Call. The pump is paused. We'll get back to you later. I'll tell you a few other pockets for me. Folks have probably heard me talk about vintage hockey. I love collecting the goats of vintage hockey. I think there's a clear 3 best there. You've got Gretzky, Bobby Orr, and Gordie Howe. I think they're all pretty flat. In the past, 3 to 5 years, even Gretzky, it used to be, you can't go wrong with Gretzky. He's the goat of the goats. I didn't look at his chart, but in my just looking at his rookie prices, they're all pretty flat. I just finished my PSA set registry of Bobby Orr, which was a fun journey, and I love his cards. So vintage hockey, a lot of the great vintage soccer players markets, they've done. Pele's maybe kind of recovered a little bit. Diego Maradona, who I still think is one, he's on the Mount Rushmore. His cards are pretty affordable right now. So there's a lot of stuff out there. We talked about football, soccer, basketball, hockey. And yeah, I do think some of these are sort of crouching tigers ready to pounce and jump and catch up to the rest of the market. So I think there's plenty of fun things to hunt when we go out to Chicago.
Yep. Agreed. Good stuff.
All right, let's pivot to, before we get into kind of the national itself, just quickly showing some of, or slowly, however we want to go. In this market, what have we been up to this year? What have we been buying? So Nate showed a Wembanyama card, and I showed some 90s refractors. But what else have you been buying this year in this kind of market?
So yeah, I'll stick with that pile first. I've got a couple piles here of stuff that I have home and have access to. So yeah, with a few ultra modern cards. So I think one of the things we all tend to do when the market does what it's done over the past year or two is kind of look at the stuff that we normally collect and regret that we didn't buy the stuff that we know really well. And, we had a card on our want list, with that 49 Bowman Jackie or whatever it is for the last 2 years. And man, I could have gotten that PSA 4 for a third of what it costs now. And so now it's almost like admitting a mistake to buy it. And so
yeah,
it's like harder to buy the stuff we're most familiar with in a market like this. So I feel like a lot of us tend to like some of us vintage guys might pivot to buying Kobe just because like we haven't tracked that market as much. We don't feel like we missed out because it's kind of newer or ultra modern or non-sports or whatever it is, just something away from our core. Because when we look at those cards that we're most familiar with, it's like, gosh, I've wanted that card for 4 years. Why?
Totally.
How can I pay this price? Like this price just isn't right. I know this card so well. It can't be worth this.
Yeah.
But and I think the Jordan collectors are doing that, and the Kobe, so I think there's a natural pivot away, and that's kind of interesting maybe because a lot of us start collecting different stuff. But so on the ultra modern side, I showed the green space dust Wemby, which I never thought I would have a green space dust card in my collection. The other Wemby that I got during this run was a Court Kings rookie level 2 that I thought was kind of cool looking. I've always really liked Court Kings. I hadn't bought any of those in a couple of years. So I do have like a little collection of Court Kings hoops rookies. I started a little Aaron Judge collection. I'm a big Yankees fan, and
Yankees fan. Yeah,
I had never done really like any modern baseball. And to your point about Ohtani kind of making a lot of things happen, you look at a lot of Ohtani and Judge equivalents, and for me it's kind of hard to be like, wow, that Ohtani card is like 5x the Judge card or whatever. So this is a home field advantage card from 2022 that was like a couple $100 that I thought looked really cool. So I've gotten a few of those, and then I said I'm not interested in the vast majority of the Fanatics products, but I am interested in some. And this is this year's gold refractor numbered to 50 Josh Allen card. So
and it's raw. It's raw.
Exactly. Yeah. I really like these black framed one touches. I plan to try to find some more of these at the National. I think they look really cool. So, so that's been the bit of a modern pivot. The other thing I feel like we can do in this market is kind of focus on some of the, kind of lower end cards on our list where, maybe if a card has gone from $150 to $200 or, from 50 to 90, it doesn't hurt as much as some of the bigger cards on our list. Just kind of less of an investment involved. So this was one that I looked for a long time. It's the 1971 Wilt Chamberlain in PSA 6. And I got to say, incredibly tough card. One of the toughest cards I've hunted.
Yeah.
I looked at so many of these because, almost every set has its centering issues. So, you have that variable. But then when you add registration and you add excess print, and this card really struggles with both of those. So to try to find one that kind of hits the mark on all three is really threading the needle, and I managed to do that a couple months ago. So
and brightness, that set has to look bright, and yours, I've got that card in a PSA 8. Yours.
Oh, do you? Wow, nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And then I've been picking up a few of a guy that I really like to collect. So here's a raw 58 top Spawn, just a cool looking card.
I love that card.
Yeah, it is. That's great, isn't it? The colors, the pose. I think that was like $22 or something. 54 tops Spawn. I bought this one from my son Luke a couple weeks ago. He had this in his collection and was showing it to me. I was like, you really need that card? I think that'd look better in my collection. So got a little under the same roof deal done. I've been going pretty heavy on Spawn. Here's a 49 Bowman Spawn that's signed.
Wow.
So it's hard to see.
I love
there,
that card too.
But you can see it a little bit. So it's a PSA 2 with a 10 auto. And this is a card that I've needed to get. And, I'll buy signed cards every once in a while if it's not like a budget breaker for like, I won't, I've talked about this before, but I won't pay like 5 or 7 or 10x what I would otherwise budget for the card because it's signed, but I'll pay 1.5 or 2x what I'd otherwise pay for the card. And I had the opportunity with this one. So I was glad to add that. And then rounding out the Spawns, I got the 51 Bowman I got in
stacking them. Wow.
So I got the 4. I finally found the 51 Bowman Spawn for my collection. A lot of these Spawns have been hunting for a while, but I think I've really doubled down lately as some of the bigger cards have felt more elusive. And then this one popped up and it sold for like $95 or something, and it looks really nice. So had to stack it. And then similar to Spawn, little player collection for Yogi. I managed to find this 64 Venezuela card at the Strongsville show and got the 57 tops with Mantle there in a PSA 4. So that's been some of the kind of, lower to mid-level stuff that I've been focusing on. I have a few more, but I don't want to do too much here. And then I do some junk wax collecting, 80s specifically, and I've managed this year to pick up the 87 Fleer box, BBCE sealed, and the 86 Fleer box. So continuing, I have I think it's 14 boxes from the 80s that I'm in search of for my 80s unopened box collection. Unlike our good buddy JT, I have zero compulsion to open them. He'll yell at me, I think, after this if he's still on to tell me to open them. But So I've been doing, some of that. And then, yeah, I have like a signed 80s card collection as well. So I've been picking up some of those. And then last but not least, there are some cards where they are more kind of core vintage and pre-war stuff that I collect that, I just have a lot of love for, conviction about, or, hit me just right. And, I am okay continuing to kind of pay the higher prices as they go up. And so one of those was this 67 Venezuela Hank Aaron card, which is a really tough one to come by. And got that from our IG buddy, Jonah. And really been enjoying that one. It's a really nice looking SGC one. So that, and then one that I know that you like a lot, which is the Goodwin Champions Jack Glasscock in an SGC.
What a beauty.
1.5. Great looking card, as you know. Been really enjoying the Goodwin Champions cards. And then my favorite card of the year by far, you might remember what it is, but I got the Sport Kings Jim Thorpe, which was at the top of my list for probably 2 or 3 years. Couldn't find the right example. This is a PSA 5.5, which is a way higher grade than I ever thought I'd get, than I usually collect. But
totally.
Some cards, like you've talked about too, as the market goes up, they get away from you and you decide you're just not ever going to have one. But with some rare cards, even as it goes up, you just keep wanting it more and more. And I had an opportunity with this one from Chris, Icon Sports Cards, to do a good deal that was partial trade, and it just looked perfect to me. So I paid the inflated prices on that one because it was a pretty recent pickup, but I couldn't be happier that I did.
Yeah, you're never going to regret it. It's so beautiful.
Thanks.
As you were talking, I just kept thinking, what a fun hobby this is, because there's stuff for everybody on any budget. Like you were sharing cool vintage Warren Spahn card, one of the great left-handed pitchers ever, for $22. I was looking the other day when we were talking with Matthew about 1960 Topps All-Star subset. You can buy, there's legendary players, Ernie Banks, Hank Aaron. You can buy some of those raw for $40, $50.
Yeah.
There's so many different price points. It's a blast.
Absolutely, man.
I'll show.
How about you? Yeah, let's see what
few.
You've done some fun things this year, man.
Yeah, I've been calling them side quests. One of them you talked about. You shared a Josh Allen card, and you shared a Judge card for Yankees fan, Buffalo Bills fan. Yeah. And I went to my fandom and thought about who are some of the players that I loved watching as a kid. I was a big Ohio State fan, and I realized that these classic insert sets from the 1990s, where the cards are totally untouchable, like the 1997 Precious Metal Gems Jordan card, could never dream of that. But I watched Terry Glenn play wide receiver at Ohio State, and he's in that set, in the football version of the set. It's numbered out of 150, and it's a few $100. Orlando Pace. My claim to fame when I was at Ohio State is I once peed next to him at a urinal. I think I mentioned that in a prior episode. And I got his 1998 Star Rubies card. It's a gorgeous card. These are several $100s, but not thousands of dollars. Robert Smith, the 1999 Precious Metal Gems. So I started just collecting my childhood Ohio State heroes when they were in the pros in these sets. Some of them were complete duds as players, like our quarterback. His name was Bobby Hoying. He played like 7 games for the Eagles, but he's in some of these sets. Our buddy Tony TJ is online, collects Bobby Hoying too. So that was one of my side quests, and it was a way to buy cards that there's something iconic about the set, but the player is just kind of important to me as a collector. I'm usually, I imagine, when I bid on these, bidding against set collectors who are trying to build the whole set. So that was one side quest. I've continued working on my Series 1 Garbage Pail Kid set registry. I as a kid collected the whole set, and I've been searching for them all in like PSAs 7, 8s, and 9s. and I'm holding up April Showers here. I'm one card away from finishing the set. So I bought about 8 or 9 of those this year. That was fun. They also are going ballistic in value. So the price, that's one where I was like, oh, I better get the remaining ones I need before these prices get out of reach. There was I showed the East-West refractors. I finished that whole set of 20, mostly raw. But then just like you, there's some cards where when the market's going up, due to the scarcity of the card or my conviction or my love for the card, I had to have it. So one of those, and I didn't buy as much big vintage this year because of values, but I took a few swings. This one you were aware of. You and Matthew helped me find it.
Nice.
This is the 1914 Crackerjack Tris Speaker. It's only my 3rd card from that set, and it's one where I just love the artwork on it. The portrait of him kind of slouched shoulders forward. It's a beautiful card. It's a PSA 1.5. I think Matthew discovered it listed on Net54, and somehow I found the person who bought it from the person who bought it from the person who bought it. But I still felt like it was a good value.
A beautiful 1.5. You ended up doing great on that, man. That card is awesome.
And if the value goes down a little bit for a decade, I'm good. Like I think there's less than 100 of them in existence. So that's one where it's just so scarce. Is that right, Nate? You know the set better than I. Is the pop for most of them like in the hundreds and the double digits and 200s? It's pretty low.
That one is a 14, right?
Yeah, it's a 14.
14, yeah. I would guess the pop on the PSA pop on that is roughly 75 and SGC roughly half of that. Probably 100, a little over 100 graded.
That's kind of where I was thinking.
Yeah.
Then another one, this is one where I'd been watching the market for years. You have this exact card in this exact grade. It's not vintage. It is iconic according to the PWCC Iconic 100. This is the 2008 Kobe LeBron refractor. So it's technically the Kobe Bryant card, but LeBron is guarding Kobe. And if you look for these at a show, you'll never see it. They don't last in the showcases. They are just ghosts at auction. And one finally popped up, and I paid the highest price. This was in, April or May, you might remember. I paid the highest price for a PSA 9 that had been paid since the COVID boom. And another one just sold tonight, Nate, for like $3,000 more than I paid for it. So I saw what was happening in the market, and I just said, it's time. It's now or never. So I'm so glad I bought it. I think I'm going to take it to Chicago just to show it off, just to bring it to trade nights and not let anybody buy it from me. Just have it on the table.
Love it, man. Right. You'll get a lot of inquiries about it. I love that card. And you did so well on that one. I bought mine for about the same price as you, but like 4 years earlier. So your IRR is going to be a lot better than mine.
Yeah. But overall, we're both up now.
That's right.
The last one, and I just posted this on Instagram. This is the green Gowdy Ruth. My favorite vintage baseball card. It's my 3rd example, and I'm going to say last example. It's a PSA 1 that when I finally got it in hand and I looked at it and turned it over, no pinhole, no severe fraying of an edge, no crease. I don't know why it's a 1, but it looks like an upgrade to me. So I'll be taking my SGC 2 example to Chicago to see if I can trade that or sell it. Because this is my lifetime copy, and I think what I paid was an all-time high for a 1. There might have been a PSA 1 5-6 years ago that sold for more, but I would have gone way higher. I've just been waiting for the right copy for me, and this is another one where I will sleep soundly over the next hopefully several decades without worrying about the market for this going up or down. I'm happy to own it forever.
The next several decades. I love it. That's awesome. So a medium-term hold on that one.
I just hope I live that long. Is why I said hopefully I got several decades left. But
Dude,
I plan to own it.
I think I helped to source that one. I spotted that one on eBay. And
you did. And I didn't have any standing search on it
Yeah.
for eBay. You know, I would look at auction houses. It would have come and gone, and I never would have seen it
Yeah.
if you hadn't have. And
It's
I
crazy.
as soon as I saw you sent it, and I just thought to myself, I don't know if I said this, but in my head, like I do at work, I just said on it. Like,
Yes.
I am on it.
I knew
Like,
it. As soon as I saw it, even before I because I've known about your hunt for this card for years. I know how much you love that card, and I saw it, and that is Jonathan. I was so glad you had as much conviction as you did, and really went after it. It's so fun when you win a card like that, well under your max bid, and then the best thing is you get it in hand, and it's just as good or better than you had hoped. So it just is perfect, man.
Yeah. All right. So this has been a long wind up to talking about the National. All of that said, what we've been buying, where the market is. Nate, what's your plan? What are you going to do next week?
All right. So let me talk just for a minute, and I'm going to do rapid fire because I made a list here, but things that I need to do. Some of these are in process, but here's my prep kind of things that the list that I've made of things that have to happen. So I make a tentative calendar of, kind of things that I want to do each day that I'm there, like we'll get in at some point on Tuesday. So starting kind of Tuesday dinner through Sunday when we leave. Then, I make a list of people that I want to see and kind of break it down by where I'm likely to see them. So dinners, on the show floor, at trade nights, whatever. There's, at least, 30 or 40 people that I want to really make sure that I see. A lot of the people that aren't on the list will be some of the best conversations that I have there as well. But, there's those people that you can't go to a national and not catch. Planning some of the dinners. You and I have our annual standing dinner on Wednesday night with our families, which I'm really looking forward to. And I've a couple of other dinners planned. There's a little, we're doing it well because we go late after the show and there's no trade night on Wednesday, but the dinners can be a trade-off because you end up missing trade night if you do kind of like a big dinner at a normal dinner time. So there's a balancing act there. So, doing some of that planning, got to, think about any business that I want to do, of course, with PSA and then Fanatics, Mike Baker, any of the auction houses, and bring any cards that are necessary for that. So with PSA, it's grading or reslabbing. Fanatics, it can be getting stuff from the vault, putting stuff in, trying to get the, eye appeal review. NBA, it would be the eye appeal review for me. I don't grade with them or collect their graded stuff, at least not yet. I probably won't be doing any NBA stuff. The only time I have used NBA was with a card that I knew I was selling because I had bought a replacement for the card. If I bought a nice card that had an NBA sticker, I probably wouldn't take it off because I don't like to burn money, but I don't want to put those on PC cards because they kind of distract me on the front. I've even asked him if he would put them on the back because I might actually get some reviewed, but he said, no, it's front only. So for now, I'm not an NBA submitter, certainly not on PC cards, but there will be some rare instances where I have a card that I know I'm going to move that might benefit value-wise from it that I would do it, but I don't think I'll be doing. Yeah. And then finalizing my want list, finalizing the cards I'm going to bring to sell, trade, or upgrade, or as in the case of your new Kobe refractor, bring as a showpiece just to taunt people with. And then I gotta always do. My son and I do some autographs. Through TriStar, we've had a lot of fun with that through the years. So this year we're going to be getting some Hakeem Olajuwon autos and meeting him. I'm going to get some cards signed that I pulled from packs as a kid, some 86 Fleer Hakeem. So I love it when a guy's there that I can do that with. So that'll be cool. And then the other one we're going to be doing, he's not signing cards, but we're going to get a photo and then get it signed by Mike Tyson. But that would be pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, autograph pens, kind of being ready for that whole process because it's like this big lead up to like a 30-second process where like every movement has to go right and it gets like really stressful. So you got to like plan all that out. And then get some cash. Certainly, the more cash you can have on hand, the better. You get better prices with cash. And then some supplies for raw cards. I'm hoping and expecting that we'll be doing our junk wax box
Yep.
rip again on Saturday night. So, got to have some supplies for that. And I think that's pretty much it for my prep list.
Oh man, it's a lot of prep.
It is.
I'm glad I have you there and Luke, because I'm trusting that all I have to do to know what trade night to go to is just hang out with you, and you guys will get everything.
For sure. We got you on that front, man. Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you think? How's your prep coming? You feeling pretty ready for it at this point?
My prep is pretty good. I still need to load up my supplies, the team bags and penny sleeves and stuff like that. I've got most of what I want to take in the sealed box that I'm going to hand PSA ready. I've got my wish list. I'll share that really quickly. Lucia and I, my daughter, have done this for years now. We like to print out. It's a visual list, so there will be about 6 pages that look like this. We just to walk around and stare at the images on the list, and then stare. Now, the first page is usually the cards that I'm most serious about hunting. You see a couple Joe DiMaggio cards there, play ball Ted Williams, the Walter Johnson portrait T206, a few 14 Cracker Jacks. So those are some of the higher value cards. But then in the other pages, there's a lot of just fun stuff that might be lower value, more common, some raw cards, some modern cards in it. So it's a bunch of different ideas. I've found that it's more fun for me if there's all kinds of different ways to look for things and find something that's fun, versus I have to find this one card or it's not a successful convention. And there's all kinds of stuff. For example, I'm this year looking for a Katie Ledecky card. She's one of my favorite Olympians of all time, and I've seen there's some cool numbered Katie Ledecky cards. So, like that's one thing that's on my list. So lots of random stuff like that. In terms of the schedule, my whole family, I have 3 kids. Lucia's been really into it 5 years in a row. The other 2, they can tolerate a few hours of show. So they're going to be there for a few hours on Wednesday. We're going to do a dinner. But then the rest of the week, Juliana's just going to be staying in a different hotel from me downtown on Michigan Avenue, taking the kids to museums and fun stuff. And so I'll probably leave at some point on Friday and do some stuff, Chicago stuff with my family. But the rest of the time, I'm kind of on my own at the show. So I think I can guilt-free stay up late, go to the trade nights, hang out with friends, show each other what we got in the hotel lobby.
That sounds like a perfect setup, man. I love it.
Yeah. So, and then the thing that's a little bit different this year, because of the state of the market being where it is, I already got my cash that I'm going to take, but I have a prearranged deal to sell a Michael Jordan card that 4 or 5x since I bought it a couple of years ago. And then I have my other copy of Green Gowdy Ruth. Now I won't sell it for cheap. I'd rather hold 2 of them, but I am considering it. If folks think that it might get a sticker from Mike Baker, I might try to get one, and then might try to sell it. But so I'm taking a few big cards that I'll monetize, and then I think that'll be really my budget, and taking some other kind of mid-level cards as trade bait. So I'm gonna try to monetize more of my collection there than I usually do.
Nice. Yeah, that's interesting. And what's your primary strategy for that? You've done some kind of trades with dealers, I know, some kind of big trades. Obviously, you have trade night. Any other thoughts on kind of the best way to end up moving some of those cards?
Yeah, the last 2 years I had a lot of success with certain dealers, and I would usually make a note of, or even take a picture of their booth or the name, but certain dealers that will give you good value on trades. Ash, who we've already talked about, is one. So there's a few cards that I intend to march right up to his booth and see like what's the value that he's got on it, and he has so much inventory. But there's a few others, but I also found in some ways, it takes a little bit of humility and even courage when you're looking at somebody's card and you want to buy it, to just pull out some things and say, hey, would you consider partial trade value for this? But they don't mind it. And if you're paying attention to the sorts of inventory they have, you'll probably get it right. If I'm pulling out some Garbage Pail Kid cards, almost nobody there is going to want them. You know, if I'm pulling out a Terry Glenn PMG red, there's a lot of dealers that would love to have this, and there's a lot of dealers that wouldn't even know what it is. So really my strategy is like pay attention to the dealer. If they seem reasonable, or if I know them and I have trade bait that I think they might be interested in, go ahead and pull it out. But I'm also more excited this year than usual at just trying to lean into some of the trade nights and be present, put prices on my cards, and
Right.
be willing to let some things go. It's always been hard for me to let things go, but this year, I hope to just be a participant and try to do some transactions and have fun in the process.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I heard, unfortunately, that there's not going to be the vintage trade night this year. Sounds like it was.
Really?
I don't know if that, yeah, I'm not positive about that, but I thought I heard that somewhere, which that would be a bummer because that was really fun last year.
It was a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that the trade nights are going to be a little bit more organized. I hope that's the case. We also know there's a lot of impromptu fun trades that happen right in the hotel lobby. So
yeah, absolutely. But
we'll
to your point about trade night, like that is way up there for me. And, I think a lot of vintage guys skip it, because you've had the full day on the floor and you got the dinners and everything. But man, that is one of my favorite elements of every national that I go to. And I've kind of, been forced to do it with having a teenage son that's really into the hobby. Like kids tend to love that stuff, but it's certainly not unwillingly that I maybe the first one, but they're just so fun. It's, to me, it's like the heartbeat of the hobby at the trade nights. Like the enthusiasm, the just like unfiltered buy sell trade and everyone talking, the conversations. It's such a great vibe in those places. It's like this little powerful, energetic microcosm of like the whole show, and like all compressed into a couple hours. I love it. For anyone listening who hasn't checked them out, I strongly suggest it.
And your son Luke is so he's enthusiastic about it. He's good at it. So I told him last year, I'm like, Luke, you're better at this than I am. And I meant it, but I learned from him and how he's able to find undervalued cards and move them at those nights. But it also, I've sensed in that it's a venue where the older collectors and the younger new collectors are kind of on equal footing, and we start talking to each other and meeting people and making connections. And there's a really fun energy that comes out of that.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, for sure. I have an interesting thing this year too, in that one of my best friends, a good friend going back to college, freshman year of college, and we've been great friends ever since. He has a son who I believe is 11, and his son has just really gotten into the hobby, and so they're gonna be coming to their first national this year. They've barely been to any shows, and I kind of wanted them to like try some other stuff to get their feet wet first, but they're jumping right into the deep end. So they'll be there on Friday and Saturday. And my friend collected as a kid and, in the 80s and stuff. And so he's starting to get a little curious about it again, but mostly there just to kind of support his son. And I talked to him last week, and he said his son has like a bunch of friends that are like really into it. They have this group at school. They're super passionate about it. They talk about it all the time. He said his son is like so excited to be coming to the show. So I'm pretty eager to get some good time with them. And I think it's kind of an interesting tie-in with where we started and talking about the market to see some things like that happening.
Totally. I bet they're going to have a blast. And I know we will. And for all the folks who've joined in the chat, I hope lots of you are going and we see you there. And these things are so fun. And for me, every year, it becomes a little bit less about the buying and just a little bit more about everything else. And I'm pumped. It's
absolutely. Yeah. And on that point, like the socials versus the buying and selling and all that, I completely agree. And you do a great job, I think, finding good cards available there, and you end up, being quite prolific in adding to your PC at the national. I tend to buy less, certainly. I love the visuals that you and your daughter make to, you know, kind of organize your focus and stuff. I think that's really cool, and I love seeing those every year. But I usually have a handful of cards, like 5-6 cards that I really would love to find. But for the most part, I'm a little indifferent about making deals. Like I wouldn't say I primarily go there to make deals. If I do, it's almost like the gravy, you know. It's
Totally.
like the social element, the excitement, the seeing the cards, the being there with your friends and family and all that is kind of like become at least the real core of it. You know, and I think the more and more time you spend in the hobby, certainly we all want to make some deals, you know, while we're there, and that makes it even a lot more fun and brings you a nice, you know, gives you a nice souvenir to bring home with you from the show. But yeah, just wanted to talk a bit on the balance. You know, I think that's one of the things that we all think about is like how much is cards / like business and collecting and stuff, and how much is just social. And we all have a little different balance, but the more time we spend in it, a lot of us, you know, it tends to continue to tip more and more toward the social. And I have a koozie here. It's from Monster Cards, Tony. Yeah. And always it says on it, drink like Mickey Mantle. One of my first stops always is at his booth, and he keeps a cooler.
He's such a good guy.
And a good handshake and a hug. And so, you know, it's just, it starts there and it just goes all the way through, and it's just great time. So
well said. And I have a feeling we're going to keep marking the years like this for a long time, going back to these nationals, and it's going to be more and more all about, you know, the people.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, Nate, this has been a blast. Thanks for everybody for joining. We always go long, and we did again, but this is a lot of fun. And I have a feeling that maybe the next Rough Cuts will be the national recap. So we'll have to do one of those on the back end of it.
For sure. That's a pretty safe bet. And I want to thank the folks in the chat for joining us live. We really appreciate it. We haven't read the comments in a while here, but I've been putting a lot of them up on the screen. So for folks that watch the YouTube recording, you'll see, you know, several of the comments at least when you go back through. And thanks again to folks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.